Over a century ago, a court in London hears the details of a conspiracy to take over a Chinese mine. A young Chinese chemist ends a technological blockade and helps create a new industrial age. A man with a dream of building a new future for his country starts down the road to success in a small textile factory. In the early years of the 20th century, Tianjin is a witness to the fierce competition between China and global powers. London is a global financial and economic center. Near the Thames sits Britain's Supreme Court. More than a century ago, an unprecedented case is heard by the court. Representatives of China, wearing gowns, with their hair tied in long braids, bring a British mining company to the dock. The evidence they present reveals a tangled story of intrigue and brazen theft. The plaintiffs are far from home. They travel a long way to argue their case in a foreign legal system. They are seeking redress for an audacious theft by a British registered firm. The story begins 137 years ago in China. At that time, Tianjin was the center of the self-strengthening movement in northern China. The Military Transportation University now sits on the former site of northern China's largest arsenal, the Northern Bureau of Machinery. To manufacture cannons, guns, and ammunition, the manufacturers need several elements, not the least of which is coal. At the time, China was importing 10,000 tons of coal each year.
In the late 19th century, industrial technology, steamships, factories, steelworks, all came to China for the first time. And what's notable is that Chinese entrepreneurs learnt very quickly from the technology that had come to China.
In 1877, Li Hongzhang recommends the development of domestic coal mines. The Chinese government launches a project using merchants to invest in and operate the mine. The mechanism was referred to as government supervising and merchants managing. The first modern mechanized coal mine in China, the Kaiping Mining Bureau, opens. It's known as China's #1 mine. Coal from Kaiping supplies the entire country. In the era of the self-strengthening movement, China begins to regain confidence as it burns domestic coal. In 1892, the Kaiping Mining Bureau is 15 years old, and its total assets are now worth 5 times more than its initial total investments. It owns the coal mine, coal canal, railroad, and ships. All of this looks very attractive to foreign companies. The prosperous company will begin to face an uncertain future as a result of a new manager, Zhang Yi, a former official of the Qing dynasty, who takes over. His rise to power begins as an attendant to the prince. After taking over the Kaiping Mining Bureau, he brings with him the working style of a Qing official. Old habits die hard, and as a former official of the imperial court, he continues to enjoy a relaxed work schedule. At Kaiping, he does nothing to improve things. Instead, he falsifies production figures and seeks foreign loans to maintain a fictitious rate of production. Difficult days are ahead for China's #1 mine. In 1900, thousands of troops from 8 nations land in Tianjin. Zhang's hobby is raising pigeons. He's arrested by the British and accused of raising pigeons to carry messages to the rebels. It's an ironic situation for a man who considered himself a friend of foreigners in China to be arrested by those friends. But he's not put in prison. Instead, he's held in a building owned by a foreign firm. An old friend appears at around the same time. The man is Gustav von Dietrich, and he is the commissioner of Tianjin Customs. Zhang trusts him as a responsible person. The foreign troops are marching on the capital. The Kaiping Mining Bureau's survival seems uncertain. Dietrich tells Zhang to put the coal mine under the protection of the British. It's easy to imagine Zhang's reaction. Alone and isolated, Dietrich's apparent help would seem to be like a drowning man getting a life preserver. He signs an official document appointing Dietrich as general manager of the Kaiping Mining Bureau. The next day, he's released by the British. Dietrich, the new general agent, proceeds with the plan to protect the Kaiping Mining Bureau. The archives preserve a contract in which all the assets of the Kaiping Mining Bureau are transferred to a man named Herbert Hoover. He represents a new British company registered in the name of Kaiping. It's a typical European contract. Dietrich's way of protecting this valuable asset is to sell the coal mine and its land. Herbert Hoover, who would become the 31st President of the United States in 1929, was the chief engineer of the Kaiping Mining Bureau and Zhang Yi's technical advisor. Zhang has complete trust in him, but doesn't know that Hoover is an agent of a firm called Baywick Mooring and Company. This firm acquires mineral resources around the world and has been doing so for many years. Hoover's thinking is clearly reflected in his report. He estimates the mine has huge commercial value and recommends an investment of £1 million. A few months later, Dietrich visits Zhang again. This time he makes no secret of his desire to obtain the Kaiping coal mine, its associated canal and port. He hopes to keep them forever. Zhang finally realizes the true intentions of the foreigners. He refuses to sell. In the face of £75,000 worth of stock shares and a tenure track position as the new company's chief supervisor in China, Zhang feels as if he's walking across a ravine on a rickety wooden bridge. He's left with few choices and must make a decision. His last line of defense collapses in the face of huge profits. With his signature, the foreigners achieve their aims. With this contract, on February 19th of 1901, the Kaiping Mining Bureau becomes the first Chinese industrial asset of Britain's Baywick Mooring and Company. Just how this happens does not remain a secret for long. A year later, his misconduct is discovered, and the Qing court orders Zhang to take Baywick Mooring and Company to court. In the winter of 1904, Zhang travels to London to confront the British dealers. This is the first court case in history between China and a foreign company. As church bells in London ring in the new year of 1905, an international lawsuit begins. Statements, reams of evidence, 60 days of confrontations, and 14 trials all culminate in a final verdict on March 1st of 1905. It is now more than 4 years since Kaiping's change in ownership.
I declare that John Pope...
The procedure carries a hint of fate. China wins. The court rules Baywick Mooring and Company's behavior amounts to fraud. However, since the subordinated agreement cannot be enforced, the plaintiff's claim is not supported by the court. The Chinese are once again helpless in an era where the strongest make the rules. The ruling of the court is apparently just a meaningless piece of paper. The huge profits generated by the Kaiping coal mine make Hoover very wealthy. A few years later, the American returns to his hometown. Perhaps he's trying to forget the stories that he features prominently in during his time in the East. In 1929, the biggest winner of the Kaiping coal mine takeover becomes the 31st President of the United States. The court's ruling fails to change the fate of the Kaiping coal mine. Britain's flag still flies above the mine. 2 years later, in 1907, the Lanzhou coal mine goes into operation right next door to the Kaiping coal mine. Yan Shikai, governor of Jili area, appoints 41-year-old Zhou Shuxi as its general manager. Zhou is the former financial chief of the northern government, but he has little interest in the new mine's operation. The Lanzhou coal mine is 10 times the size of the Kaiping mine. Zhou's real purpose is to force the Kaiping mine into insolvency and be sold back to the Chinese government. Number 7 Tai'an Road in Tianjin is the former residence of Walter Simeon Nathan, the general manager of the Kaiping coal mine. Facing the challenge from Zhou, Nathan spends many a sleepless night here. But late at night, in his residence, Zhou is equally worried. A price war focuses public attention on the new coal mine. At the same time, it faces pressure from angry shareholders. As the mine continues to lose money, they pressure Joe by threatening a withdrawal. Nathan, meanwhile, faces a dilemma. If he retreats, he loses the market. If he continues, he loses everything. The terrible reality is that his coal mine is surrounded by the Lonzo Mine. Within a few years, the Kaiping coal veins will be exhausted. Fight or not, it will all lead to a dead end. This is exactly what Joe has in mind. He hopes to retake the Kaiping coal mine through a price war. Yuan Shikai loses his position as the governor of northern China, and Joe is forced to continue the fight on his own. The two coal mines are engaged in a long battle. In time, the advantages enjoyed by the Lonzo coal mine tips the balance in its favor. The unique location and low prices are constantly undercutting the Kaiping coal mine. In 1910, the British firm can no longer hold on. Joe's long wait is over. 10 years earlier, his predecessor was without options and forced to sign away control of the mine. Now, China is poised to take it back. The British ask £1.78 million for the Kaiping coal mine. As Nathan finally accepts reality, it seems reality is ready to deal a blow to his competitor. The revolution of 1911 begins, and 2,000 years of imperial rule come to an end. The Kaiping coal mine takes advantage of the situation and fights back. The Lonzo coal mine loses. Just a few months later, the Kaiping and Lonzo mines experience radical changes and merge identities. On the 1st of June in 1912, the Kaiping Mining Bureau and the Lonzo coal mine form a joint business venture called the Kailuan Bureau. It is the first year of the Republic of China. Zhou Shushi sighs and remarks the purpose of founding Lonzo was to retake Kaiping. In the end, they are joined. That's not what he had worked for. Although victory is just a step away, Joe will always regret how it ends. "12 years pass from the invasion in 1900 to the founding of the Republic of China in 1912. 12 years is but a brief moment in history. For the first time, Chinese industry participates in an international contest. The industrialists of the era put up a desperate fight. This is the most magnificent, most luxurious building in the British concession in Tianjin. It's the building of the Kailuan Mining Bureau. The classical Greek-style building is designed in 1920 by American engineers as a permanent salute to the flourishing era. History makes the story into a legend. Zhou Shuxi's footsteps never disappear. The empty buildings bear the scars of 100 years of industrial operation. What happens here gives energy to the next generation. In 1914, a train enters Tonggu Station on the extension line of China's first railway. Fan Shudong studied chemical engineering in Japan when he was 17. He returns home at the age of 30, full of ambition. Salt sits on the beach of Tianjin's Tanggu district. This rich source of salt makes the chemist excited. In 1914, Fan founds a salt factory. In July, World War I breaks out, and China's imports of alkalis dwindle. Alkali production has a global history of 100 years, but in China, it's still at the theoretical stage. Fan plans to develop the chemical industry by producing alkali from salt. In November of 1916, a letter from Suzhou makes Fan very excited. Wu Zibo from the Weiji soft drink factory writes that he is working on alkali production with chemist Chen Taofu. He's eager to meet Fan to discuss the business. As he reads the letter, Fan realizes he's not alone. He writes a reply, then scribbles on the back of the envelope, November 29th, 1916, the starting point of the founding of the Yongli soda plant. From this moment onward, Yongli will become a pioneer in China's alkali production industry. Tianjin is a main salt transportation center in northern China. Fan Shudong's salt factory provides raw material for alkali production. The huge consumption of salt results in a heavy tax burden. It is difficult for a private enterprise to cope. There is a special academic team at Nankai University's Department of Economics. They researched the early private enterprises of China. Some important records come to light during their research. One document reads, "For the purpose of promoting industrial enterprises, it is approved." This is a tax exemption from October of 1917. The state is giving up a lot of revenue to support a fledgling business. Many well-known names appear on the list of shareholders. They hold important positions in politics, military, and culture. The biggest shareholder is Liang Qichao, who serves as Attorney General and then as the financial chief. He works to gain a tax exemption for alkali production. "40 years after the model of government supervising and merchants managing begins in Kaiping, the politician as shareholder becomes the new model for business." The tax problem is solved. Now, a blockade on Western technologies needs to be overcome. Fan Shudong, Chen Taofu, and their team must solve this problem. Fan assigns the task of obtaining alkali production technology to Chen Taofu. Chen is 29 years old. In the winter of 1918, he leaves for the United States. He investigates the alkali industry, purchases machinery and equipment, and recruits technical people. After more than a year, 2 experts finally promise to produce engineering drawings for the plant. 5 overseas students help them with the design work. These are the engineering drawings Chen brings to Tianjin. To them, it looks like a sealed book.
我们从陈条福跟范旭东之间的往来信函当中，可以发现很多的这个细节，可以展现出当时技术上有多少困难，或者说我们建造这么一个在国际上具有很高技术水平的公司，对中国人来说是怎么样一个困难的状况啊？我们从2个侧面来可以看出，第一个侧面呢，就是说，在国外呀。就是不是苏尔维工会它授权的这些公司，它尝试制解都没有成功。像日本，它技术在近代后来呢，慢慢比中国要稍微高一点，但是它也试验了多年，一直都不能成功，成功不了。这个说明非常的难，非常的困难。
In 1921, Fan Shudong invites Topang Ho, one of the 5 students to help with the engineering drawings, to join Yongli as the chief engineer. Ho was a graduate of Columbia University. Sun Shiwu is the chief chemist of the Kailuan coal mines. Fan's idea of industrial salvation resonates strongly with this former Harvard University graduate. In 1922, he accepts an invitation from Topang Ho and Fan Shudong to join them. He walks away from an established position and comes to the desolate Tonggu district. Here they set up China's first chemical research institution, the Yellow Sea Society. Yellow Sea seems appropriate as Tianjin faces that body of water. They believe the fate of China's future lies in the sea. Fan comments that without a group of people fully committed and dedicated to the hard work of creating new academic skills, there will be no new energy produced in China. These are Sun Shuwu's descendants. They are graduates of Tsinghua University and Nankai University. Although Sun doesn't pass on much wealth, his dedication to scientific research passes from one generation to the next. They are carrying letters written by Sun Shuwu to the academic team at Nankai University. Although the paper is yellowed with age, the dream laid out in the letters is as clear as if it's written yesterday.
在美国人眼里，我总是一个弱小国家的学者。他们瞧不起中国，总使我们蒙受一种屈辱的感觉。那时我便发誓，一定要努力学习，一定要比他们强。 一定要为振兴祖国的化工事业尽心尽力。
39-year-old Fan Shudong, 32-year-old Topang Ho, and 34-year-old Sun Shuwu work closely together. They raise the first flag of the Chinese chemical industry in Tianjin. In those days, In the chemical laboratory of Tianjin's Nankai University, the answer is found. Everything is going well in the process of making alkali in the lab.
在我们实验室里制碱呢，可以说是比较简单的。我们就是说采用索尔维或者说侯氏联合制碱法，就是说很容易的，就是得到我们的纯碱碳酸钠。但是我们实际上，如果就是说放到工厂里去，就是扩大生产，可能就不像这么简单了。比方说呢，我们在我们实验里，我们用那个制取二氧化碳用的盐酸和那个碳酸钙，就用的玻璃瓶子就可以了。但是在工厂里边没有那么大的玻璃容器了，就要考虑它如果采用工业化的容器呢，就要考虑到防腐的问题。
The problem of alkali production is how to apply a laboratory model to industrial scale production. This complicated and accurate production process is known as Solvay's method. In those days, it's the only method of alkali production, but was blocked for use in China. To produce alkali and uncover the secret of Solvay's method, the chemists worked for countless days and nights. Finally, 70 years of technical blockades and a monopoly on production are broken in the summer of 1926. On the 29th of June in 1926, production resumes at the Yongli soda plant, and the final product is of good quality. To distinguish it from the imported alkali, Fan Shudong names the product Soda Ash Light. He's determined to use the red triangle as the trademark.
永利成功出检的这个消息一出来呀，马上就遭到了这个跨国公司的围追堵截，所以他们当时定的这个价格也是非常的，就是带有这种竞争性或者抑制性啊。当时他定的价格其实是在永利的成本线以下，就恰恰是在你的成本线以下。那么对不内蒙来说，它能够获得大量的利润，但对永利来说，它就活不下去了。所以在这个情况之下，永利怎么办？所以他就想了一招，就是说要走出去，通过走出去获得这个生存的能力。
At an international trade fair in Philadelphia in August, Red Triangle Sodium Carbonate wins the highest honor. This is the first step by Fan Shudong. Experts praise the brand as a symbol of China's industrial progress. In the face of Fan's counterattack, lowering its price is the only option for Brunner Monde. In 2 years, the price of alkali is reduced by 60%. Edward Selby Little puts forward stringent requirements to outlets. If they sell alkali made by Brunner Monde, they cannot sell the alkali of other brands. If they do, they lose their commission fee and cash pledge. Fan Shudong responds by looking to the land where he attends university, Japan. In Japanese industrial circles, the well-established Mitsubishi Company and the new Mitsui Company are competing with each other. Fan knows Mitsubishi has alkali production factories, but Mitsui has none. He negotiates with Mitsui to supply alkali, which it will sell domestically.
那么永利想的办法就是跟三井公司合作，因为三井在日本有一个庞大的销售网络，也是一个大财团，大集团，所以他跟三井合作之后呢，一下子就是打开了日本市场。
Japan is an important market for Brunner Monde. Yongli sells its products in Japan at a loss, but the losses are not too great. Brunner Monde's sales volume is 10 times that of Yongli in Japan. The loss incurred from each price reduction is enormous. Each day, the phone rings frequently in Edward Little's office. He gets calls from various local distributors complaining about his slow-moving products. He feels like he's on a knife's edge. The arrogance he displays at his first meeting with Fan Shudong is fading. Driven by economic interests, he makes a new decision. Both sides are suffering from the price war. A new model arises at this moment. Jung Lee and Brunner Mond will try to patch things up. From competition to cooperation, new business rules are created in an era of global trade. In 1930, red triangle soda ash light finds its way to the home of Solvay's method, Belgium. Once again, it wins the gold medal in the exposition in 1930. In 1943, a major event takes place. Thousands of experiments and a rigorous scientific approach result in Tu Peng Ho developing his own method of alkali production. This is a more scientific method. It puts an end to the 81-year-old monopoly of Solvay's method. Ho compiles his scientific research achievements and dedicates them to mankind. The harbor industrial area sits beside the Bohai Sea. It's the former site of the Yongli soda plant. It's still in operation today. Fan Shudong's statue stands inside the lobby. On its base are the words of Mao Zedong calling Fan an industrial leader who makes great contributions to China. These are China's first generation of industrialists with overseas educational backgrounds. They spend their youth in Tianjin. Many years later, the city remains well known because of their achievements. As Red Triangle Alkali is being awarded a prize in Belgium in 1930, a new industry emerges in Tianjin, now one of China's modern industrial cities. At that time, there are as many as 1,400 manufacturers in the textile industry. Their total capital accounts for 1/3 of all industries in Tianjin. The history of the textile industry is on display at the Tianjin Textile Museum. Ni Sichong, a former military governor from Anhui province, settles in Tianjin and invests in the textile industry. The most famous one is the Yuyan cotton mill. This is Ni's former residence.
我爷爷呢，倪次聪，他是安徽阜阳人，因为跟这些个北洋的政界人物的关系，这个就落户到天津，在天津呢进行了大量的投资，所以我爷爷在投资豫园也好，金城也好，除了他是大股东以外，所有这些集资的人都是北洋系的。
The old factory site is now a vegetable market. Its ceiling still bears traces of the old days. Another cotton mill not far away is also one of Ni's investments. It's now closed and the days of prosperity are long gone. It's probable that no one would predict that traditional textiles would undergo a revolutionary change at the height of their success. Leather, cotton, and linen constitute the traditional Chinese way of dressing. The knitted wool from Europe offers unprecedented comfort for people. they have a new selection. Japan invades northeast China in 1931. Then, the Japanese staged the September 18th incident. China faces a crisis, and a passion grows among people to revitalize Chinese industry. Boycotting foreign goods and advocating Chinese products becomes the fashion of the time. The people quickly change their attitude from learning from Westerners to protecting the nation. Just as a hero emerges in time of misfortune, a special era often produces remarkable enterprises. Runli Company's main business is carpets. The general manager of the company, Zhu Zhisheng, absorbs ideas from foreign cultures, but never gives up the hope of saving the country through industrial development. He decides to enter the textile industry to compete against foreign goods. Song Fei-ching is 32 years old and owns a young company, the Oriental Corporation. He is building a dream of his own. Runli is flush with capital. Song knows he can't compete. Although Runli's textile production methods and his own appear around the same time, they're largely different. Song, however, feels as though his opponent has already surrounded him with heavy artillery. Song invites Zhu Zhisheng to talk. This is a story often told in Tianjin. It's not hard to imagine the two men meeting and then realizing they share a bond. Song Fei-ching confides to Zhu Zhisheng. Zhu tells the young man about his knowledge of the wool market and experience in the industry. At a hotel in Tianjin, these two men, with the common dream of China's industrial salvation, reach a gentleman's agreement. Runli will give priority to carpet and wool fabric. The Oriental Corporation will focus on knitted wool products. Competition will no longer exist. These two men believe Chinese industry needs more cooperation. The Oriental Corporation's fine knitted wool products come out soon afterwards. Newspapers in Tianjin are full of ads for the new product. This vivid image is the trademark of the new products. Its brand name is Dear Young Wool. In ads for the new product, Song Fei-ching tells people not to forget this is the only domestic wool. Advertising light boxes for Dear Young are seen on every corner of Tianjin, including the entrance to a theater in the Japanese concession. The advertising rates here are 4 times as much as other places. Song Fei-ching's determination to fight foreign goods is strong enough to put up a giant ad here. Time and memory remove the hard edges. The once intense feeling of national integrity is more of a memory today. In 2012, Song Fei-ching's 4 daughters donate their father's records to Stanford University. They protect these treasured documents for many years. Among them, there is a business plan. More than 80 years ago, a golden age for Chinese industry flourishes. Song Fei-ching has ambitious plans for the future. He wants to build schools and set up scholarships for poor students. He plans to build help centers for jobless people and public hospitals where ordinary people will get medical treatment. Song Fei-ching names this business plan My Dream. He doesn't know when the dream will come true, but he believes that he has seen the future. A love of horse racing is one of the earliest imports. The close embrace of ballroom dancing provokes a protest movement. Blockbusters from Hollywood are released in cinemas here at the same time as in America. The pastimes enjoyed by people from around the world bring vitality to life in the city.